Hi everyone, I'd love for us to paint this watercolor floral crate today. Let me show you everything I'll be using today. I have my Sonnet and SeimiArt watercolors. I have my Intuition brushes. I have a 6 and a 3 round and a size 6 flat. I have my watercolor palette for blending my watercolors, and I have 2 jars of water over here, one for my dirty brush and then one with clean water for painting. My watercolor paper today is 350 GSM watercolor paper from Dollar Tree. It's a size 3 by 5. I pre-cut these from the 8 by 10 size that the pads come in. Use what you have. It's going to be great. Let's get started. So I want to start today by making a wooden crate, and I want to do this with my burnt sienna, and I'm just going in with somewhat of a light wash with this. I'm using my size 6 flat brush by Artigria, and I am just making some heavier pressure and then easing up at the end. Okay, and then I'm going to drag this back over so that I have more of a shadow on the left side. I'm just going to do 3 of these with a little bit of space in between. Okay, last one. Okay, I like it. So I want to do this little simple flower arrangement in this little crate. I think that will be quite cute, and I'm really excited about painting this today. A little bit of a shadow here. Get my voice to behave today. That'll be nice. I think I'd like a little bit of gray in this, but actually I'm going to take my dark brown because it is kind of, if you can see that, it is as if it has some black or gray in it, so I like that. Okay. And I have one little spot I just want to dab at to just kind of prevent this from bleeding anymore into my shadow there. Okay. I'd like to start, I think, today with some yellow flowers. So I'm going in with my yellow deep, and I've changed my brush now to my size 6 Intuition by Artigria. And I am really not super concerned with my brushes or anything like that. I'm not, you know, these are not necessarily favorite brushes because they outperform. They're just great basic brushes, and you know, sometimes just the brush that does the job is the one that you like to use, and that is certainly true here. This is a great brush that gets the job done. So I'm putting in these floral centers, and I want to kind of go off of this side and maybe have one up here. And then I just want to go in with my clean water and make some petals. So these are some kind of, you know, daisy, some kind of cheerful, happy little summertime flower. Probably not sunflowers, but some kind of daisy, I would say. And I'm not worried about any of my petals overlapping onto other flowers. I'm not trying to keep these separate because this is an arrangement in a crate, and I feel like it's just kind of busting out with these florals. So just kind of going in and making these petals, probably 5 or 6 petals generally, and then not trying to be very rounded. See how I'm kind of going this way. So I have somewhat of a triangle here, and I'll keep doing that. I'll try to keep that in mind just because I do really like an asymmetric type of arrangement. And then I want to go with a few kind of tall florals, something like I am having such a brain day where I'm not remembering these florals. Lupine. I wanted to say larkspur, and everyone who kind of watches any of my work knows that, I mean, I know some flowers, but I also paint quite from my imagination, and I cannot always remember flower names, but today I'm really struggling a little bit extra. I don't know. Maybe because it's a Monday when I'm recording this. Okay, so then I want to go back in, and I want to switch out my brush now for just something a little smaller. I'm switching from my Intuition size 3 round, and then I just want to go in and dot in and around, touching these petals that I painted, and that will give me some nice little bleeds. The pigment that I brushed in first is going to just start seeping into the plain water that I'm putting in. I just think that's such a fun look. You can go in, if your florals got a little too dry, you can go in and just touch some of that water. And then just want to come over here and do the same thing. And you don't have to touch every petal. You can do this however you like. But I think that is pretty good right there. I feel like this one might be a little skinnier than the others, and we cannot have that. So I'm going to go back in and just create a few little fluffier areas so that it's a little bit just more cohesive with these other flowers. Okay, like it. Maybe a little extra water over here. Just give that some fluff to it. Okay, I like that. Let that kind of dry while working on some of the greens. And one thing that I want to do, because I want some of these just kind of, a little softer vegetation here, is I'm going to use my size 6 flat brush. This is totally an experiment here, but I just want to see what happens if I just kind of put some water in here, and I'm just kind of, you know, taking my brush and angling it, and then I'm taking my pigment on my other, this is my size 3 round, excuse me. I'm just letting that pigment kind of do what it wants to there. And we'll just see what happens with that. I'm going to do that again. I kind of want to have my pigment loaded so I can put this in when it's really wet. And I want to do that right down here. That is quite wet. And maybe just a spot or two inside these florals. Just find a few places to kind of dot in this background kind of greenery. And one thing that'll help is having just a real light wash loaded on my brush. Okay, I have a couple of things I'd like to just soften there. I'm just kind of taking the very corner here and kind of touching that to kind of fan this somewhat out. Okay, just being very sure not to get too concerned with symmetry. You know, I'm not trying to do the same thing on each side. I do like some degree of balance in my tones where I'm, you know, able to control that, but I want this to have some degree of character and not just be a round arrangement. So now I want to go in, and I still have this olive on my brush, and I just want to mix here with a little bit of my yellow. And this is kind of a, I think I might be mixing with raw sienna on my palette. And again, keeping this a real light wash, I want to go in with some of these fun little branches that have these multiple leaves on them. And see, that's kind of a nice brownish, yellowish green. I like it. It just kind of helps to give this, you know, some variety in the tones. And I'm not worried about these looking perfect. This is just kind of, you know, the idea of leaves here. And maybe a few little touches of that brownish green inside of here. And maybe even some coming out of the crate. Okay, I like it. I feel like we could go in with a little, just a little bit of detail here. Just a little. I don't want these overly, they're not going to be overly realistic, but I don't want to look like I'm trying to make them too realistic. I'm just trying to give them a little depth, a little bit of character. If the leaves are still a little wet, they're not going to be very, you're not going to see this detail. Instead, it will just kind of blend. It will spread in the wet leaf. So just select, you know, how you want that look, and then based on that, you can decide whether it's a good time to put in some of that detail. Okay. So yeah, I kind of like what happened here. I'd kind of like some of it to spread a bit, but this is kind of fun. And I'm just taking my olive with some kind of long, slim leaves. Those would kind of go out everywhere. And taking a bit of that inside this arrangement. Okay, and then just varying some of these leaves, just creating some texture. And letting some things overlap a little bit, because they would. If this were an arrangement, would overlap some. And so this is actually kind of a blended green. I think I have a green from another palette on here, probably a green cane. And then, so I'm just kind of blending with that to get some different tones for this. And kind of shaping these leaves, but not, you know, not stressing about it. They do not need to be perfect. And definitely it's already giving the idea of leaves and texture. You know, a few little things coming out from these yellows. And then I would like to create some stems for these pink flowers. And I'm just taking that same blended green, which is a, I think it's an olive, and then blended with some green cane from my, I think that would be my St. Petersburg Classics palette, which I love. So yeah, just get some of these stems in here. Not every little bit needs a stem, just you want to see it peeking here and there. And then I want to add a little more pigment. I want to see that just a little more. So I'm just touching those stems again with a little more pigment. And like some little leaves coming up from these. Okay. Would like to create a little bit of difference here, because I ended up with these greens that are real similar. So to do that, I think I'm just going to bring in some water into this background, kind of over here too. And I want to take that greenish yellow and just a very faint amount of it, and I'm just touching it in here where I put this water. I think I need just a little more, and this may be a little more on the yellow side, just based on where I'm blending it on my palette. But yeah, I like that. I like that that gave that a little bit of just distinction there. And then I'm just kind of lifting some of that as if it's greenery or vegetation back there. Just kind of dotting a little bit in that background. Yeah, I like that. So, you know, just play with stuff. That really added right there. Like, I'm tickled at that. I like that. I'm looking at these yellow flowers, and I see some hint of, you know, daffodil or something to me. It kind of looks like you can almost imagine the dimension in it. So I do want to leave the centers this white. I don't know why. I like that. I think, you know, that's the look that I want. And I think I'm pretty happy with this. I would like to make a few more little, just these grassy leaves out here. And, you know, you can see that didn't quite touch. I don't mind that. You know, we're not going for super realistic. I'm not, anyway. And maybe just a few things here. And then one thing I do want to do after I create just a little more of this golden green and put maybe one more of these little leaves over here, I want to make a little bit of definition inside these greens right here. And the way I want to do that is just taking my olive, and I just want to kind of dot some stuff in here. I think it just will give it the depth it needs. And then I can come back and soften some of that with a bit of just plain water. Just let's see how that's going to look. I'm rinsing my brush, coming back with plain water. Trying to make sure I don't really have any water beaded up on the ferrule or about to drip from it, because I don't want to just have a flat mess of all the pigment just rushing out and merging together. So just a little more water and kind of dotting that around these and seeing what happens. Again, not necessarily anything I'm aware of in any particular plant or greenery, just something that seems like it would be fun, and I like it. I think the look works, so that's what I'm doing. And I just love the playfulness of that, that you get to do that when you're making art. You get to just play, and you get to see, do I love this? Do I hate it? Okay, see how some of those beads of water are quite too much water. So I have taken my brush and blotted it a bit on my cloth. But see, I lost a little of those, some of the darker pigments. But I still think it works. It works really well. Okay, I love that. I'm happy with it. Okay, one last thing. I realized that probably these being wooden crate would, they would have some wooden texture in here, some lines. So I just want to go in with my dark brown, and I'm not using a very pigmented amount of this. I'm getting more of my water and making it a bit of a wash, and then I just want to see how this is going to look. And I'm not going to try to make solid lines all the way across. I want to just kind of lift my brush here and there. Wood grain would have that texture in it, so do my best to get across in a linear manner, but I'm not too worried about making lines all the way. Just like natural grain. And then I want to go in, dip my brush and get some of that pigment off and go with a bit of a lighter green here, just like you would see if you were looking at some wooden crates. You would see places where there's more pigment or more texture, more definition, and places where there's less. And I don't know if you saw me get to exactly the edge of that, but that was that was crazy, because I never have that much control, and plenty of times when I'm doing any of my vases, I will completely go off of an area that I do not want to go off of. So I thought that was kind of crazy. My brush just stopped exactly where I needed it to. And so I just want to go back in with a little more pigment here and there. And I think that these are fine if they kind of overlap some, or if the lines do not have to be straight. I don't think. I have looked at quite a bit of wooden crates in just my time here on this earth, and wood, it just varies the texture in it and the cracks and whatnot. So I like that. I'm very happy with it. I want a little more definition, maybe not definition, but a little more depth in this shadow. I want to go right up to the edge of this crate. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll try it. And as always, happy painting!